So yes, it's lightning talks time again. You know how this works, 5 minutes. Do not count people down at the end. It's really, really distracting, plus there might be a surprise or something like that. On deck over this side, we have Tyson Clugg. First up, Nic Couglan, who's going to be telling us all about async I/O and native coroutines in Python 3.5. Your time starts now.
Okay, so we had a lightning talk yesterday talking about the async I/O module. So one of the interesting things coming in Python 3.5 later this year is the native coroutine syntax. So this is going to be a demo of both async I/O and native coroutines, but we're actually going to start with getting my cursor back in there. Okay, so we're actually going to start with a blocking TCP client where we give it a network port and we tell it so, isn't it great? Ryan Kelly taught me how to do this. He's absolutely brilliant. I highly recommend learning.
The standard of touch typing at PyCon-au just improves year upon year. I'm really impressed.
And it's all Ryan's fault. Okay, so we have a blocking TCP client written here using the raw socket module. We're opening a socket, sending some data along it. How do we test this? Well, we're going to need a server. But if we run this in the server in the same thread, well, that's not going to work. So, well, let's use async I/O. And what we'd really like to do is we really just to be able to care about what we do when we get the data from the thing. We just say, don't really want to care about setting up the server. Just want to say, when I get a message, I want to do this. And so native coroutine syntax lets us do exactly that. We're just going to write an async function definition. And what we're going to say is, we're just going to wait for the reader to send us up to 100 bytes of data. Then we're going to decode it. That'll be our message. We'll print out a debugging message to say we received it. Then we'll grab some info about who our client was. We'll say what we're going to do in response. And we'll send it back. So this is just a very, very simple TCP echo server. We'll wait for the message to go back. Then we'll close our socket and say we're done. So you can see here that we're actually working at quite a high abstraction level. We're just saying we've got a reader that's going to send us data. We've got a writer where we're going to send data back. Very, very simple model. And so if we want to actually start our server, well, we're going to need an event loop. And we're going to need to say we're going to run a server locally. And we're going to say, well, event loop, please make my server. And it's going to go do that. Now, because we're doing this in the current thread, we're not messing about with threads or processes or anything. We're going to need to know what port that's listening on because we've asked the OS to give us one. And so we can get that really easily. We now have that in a variable. And so, but we still have the problem of we're going to want to run the server and the client, and the client's blocking. So we're going to need to run the client in another thread. And so we'll define what we want our client to do. We want our client to send a hello world message to the port of our server. And we're going to run that in the background and say, do that in the background. And so we can see that started off, and then it stopped. And the reason it stopped is our server's not running. So what we're actually going to say is run the event loop until our background call finishes. And so that runs our server, and we have our connection. So that's all pretty good, but we're still having to use a thread to run the client. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just do it all in one thread, not have to worry about threads and processes at all? Much, much simpler. So there's our response that's come back. So let's actually make our client asynchronous as well. And so again, nice higher level of abstraction. We're not dealing with sockets anymore. We're dealing with read-write streams. So we're going to tell async I/O to open the connection. We're going to print out our debugging message again and say, actually send the message. Then we're going to wait for the response from the server and say, yay, we got the response. Then we're going to kill our socket.
1 minute.
Ooh, ah. Type faster. So there's sending our message. But if we want to send 10 at once, we can do that. And we can do 10 at once, and we got all our responses back. There we go.
Well, that's all very exciting. Now, I can see a whole bunch of people waiting out the back. That camera is off now, so you can go and find some seats over there if you'd like them. There are some over here if you'd like to get your head on camera as you find some seats. I'm sure the videos will look fantastic regardless. Over on deck on this side, we have Tom Eastman. But now we have Tyson Clugg, who's going to be telling us about Selenium Page Adaptor. Let's go.
Start the clock. Hello, my name is Tyson. I'm talking about Selenium Page Adaptors. Quick sprint plug again for Django's tables come along. So, fragile test. We've all seen tests that have essentially bunches of Selenium selectors baked into them, and it really, really sucks because if something changes, your front-end changes, like front-end devs change something, your back-end team is going, oh crap, the tests are broken, now I have to go and fix everything again. You bastards. So, obvious solution is fix it, but how? Decoupling. Decoupling is awesome. You should perhaps go and provide an API. So Selenium Page Adaptors gives you a way to do that. All right. So what does it do? It provides helper classes to abstract pages and widgets in a declarative, late-bound manner. Declarative means it's like writing a Django model. So it's all nice and easy. Late bound means that it finds elements on the page during runtime, not when declared. It uses that using Python data descriptors for those that are interested. Demo time. So, installation. Pip install Selenium Page Adaptor. The only other requirement it has, of course, is Selenium. And here we are. We're going to run it in IPython. So, we're going to import some stuff. I've just got Selenium Page Adaptor, the Page Adaptor element descriptor, available elements, Selenium things, and I'm going to fire up Chrome for the PyCon website. Here we go. Woo! Here's the PyCon website.
Relying on the internet during a talk, that's really dangerous.
It is, and it's fun. So here's our first page adapter. What I'm doing is I'm trying to get these elements down here, these articles. And what I've got is a date element, it's this one here. And I've got a title link, and it's this one here. That's all I'm really interested in today. And I've got a bunch of standard Python stuff. So here's my element descriptor. It says I'm using a CSS selector, and here's my CSS selector syntax. I've got some helper properties in here, and I've got this lovely little method at the end that all it's doing is going and showing me the date and title and things. So run that one. I've also got a homepage adapter. This says how to find things on the page. It's also using selectors, this time CSS selector, and the selector is homepage news. It's using a wrapper, so it'll return an ordered dict. The key for each dict is going to be the element text from some find element thing, and then we're going to use it. So there we go, it's up and running. Let's get some articles. We've now got articles in memory. Now I can just go do some standard Python stuff, and voila, it runs that. And because it is Selenium, here's an example of go and find something, title, click, link, and there it goes, it went and clicked the link for us. So, this last line is very indicative of what you will end up doing in your code. So, if I go back, I don't know that Selenium is really going to like me doing that, but hey, let's put another thing in here. So, what article in here would you like me to click on now? If the team goes and puts something up, I could go and click on it. I'll just grab that one there. So I can go home, articles, paste that, dot click. Whoops. There we go. So I'll just click on that instead.
You need the title link as well?
Yes, of course.
Live coding, what can possibly go wrong?
Everything. Back to
1 minute.
Back to safety. So, demo. Thank you very much. Remember Django stables. So I've already got some help with the Travis CI integration. We're going to be using all sorts of cool stuff, but certainly come along and have some fun. Perhaps we might even use some other cool, neat tricks, and you get to learn about continuous integration, unit testing, code coverage, and it'll be lots of fun. And you might even get to contribute to Django too. Thank you.
Well, that was excellent. So on deck over this side, we have Ben Davies. But on my left, we have a story which I think I've heard far too many times from Tom at this point. But this time it's different because he's going to be doing it in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, your time starts 3 seconds ago.
Can you hear me? Yep, cool. I gave this talk last year. Who saw it last year? Awesome. OK, those who didn't see it, who uses XML and YAML? Lots of people. OK, everything I'm going to show you today is a feature. It's not a bug. This is stuff that YAML and XML do on purpose that you'll be really glad I told you about. This is the example code that I'm using for this thing. It's a little Flask app. You don't really need to worry about much. All you need to see is that I am importing the YAML library, and then I am parsing a request. I'm just parsing the YAML. I'm doing the same thing with XML here and XML here. The point that I want to make to you now is loading data into your system is the least interesting part of your day. You want to actually do stuff with that data. You want to solve the problem that you are going to do. So you will go, oh, I have YAML to load. I'll import YAML. Hey, it worked. There's a YAML library, YAML.tab, autocomplete. Oh, there's a thing called load. Does it do what I wanted to do? Yes, I move on. Excellent. Problem solved. Here's an example piece of YAML. It is a dictionary thing here that gets parsed into a Python dictionary here. And this little bit of magic here is for deserializing or reserializing Python objects. So this says, take a datetime and take the datetime module and the date object and pass it these arguments, and you'll get that datetime object down here. Everybody with me so far? Cool. Really, really handy feature. Did a shiver go down anyone's spine? A useful thing to know is that this will happily load the module for you. You didn't have to have already loaded the module. It'll just do it for you. So let's do the same thing. Let's just take that module, and we'll apply a function to it, and we'll pass ls to that function. And oh, wow, check it out. We've just run a script command on there. Who uses YAML? Keep your hands up while I do the next one. So let's try loading the OS module in the system thing in rm star. And then if we do ls, then hey, my directory listing is empty now, and I had to rebuild this talk from scratch when I was doing it. Surely, hey, I'm on the clock here. This
Stop
is a
it, he needs
30-minute
to talk.
This
No
does not
applause.
happen in real life, right? Well, it happened to Django twice. It happened to Rails then, and then it happened to Rails again 6 weeks later. It happened to Puppet, and then it happened to Node, and nobody cared. How do you protect yourself from this? This is a feature. This is not a bug. They did this on purpose. If you are using YAML.load, your home directory can be deleted. You make the parser stupider. You use YAML.safe-load. It's perfectly obvious, right? Because in the autocomplete on your editor, it'll be all the way down the bottom of the list, and you already found load. Let's talk about XML. How much time have I got?
2 minutes.
I can tell you everything that's wrong with
15.
XML in 2 minutes, right? So this is an entity. It's a Unicode character. It parses and becomes the little smiley face. That's cool. You can define your own entities when you send XML to a valid XML parser. If it's a good XML parser, if it's a compliant XML parser, it will do this stuff for you. You can define an entity. And I called it smiley, and I got a little smiley face. Let's make a couple entities. We make a smiley, and we make that smiley out of we make S4, which is a bunch of S3s. We make S3, which is a bunch of S2s. We make S2, which is a bunch of S1s. And then you make the last one a smiley. And everybody's happy. Look at all the happy people. This is called the billion laughs attack, and it will make a smoking ruin out of your computer. When I tried to do this when I was preparing for this talk a while ago, it never even made it to my parser because my editor blew up, because my editor decided that it would check if my XML was valid. That was Emacs, by the way. What else can you do with entities? The entity doesn't have to be a Unicode entity or a string. It can be a file. So someone can send a piece of XML to your server, and your parser will go, oh, it's asked for that entity to be that file. I'll read that file off of my disk and give it back to them. So here is the LSB release file. I decided not to use my Etsy password. So you don't want to. Your XML parser will happily hand over any file it wants to the person who asked for it. But it doesn't even have to be on your computer. It can be an HTTP URI. So it can be on your internal network. Do you want to port scan someone's internal network? Don't port scan someone's internal network, but here's an option. You don't even have to limit yourself to the HTTP port. You could have put 110 in there or 443 or whatever and just see how long the error takes to come back to know whether something was listening on that port, find out where someone's email server is. Surely this doesn't happen in real life. This happens all the time. And actually with XML stuff, you need to be especially careful because that usually means it's enterprise. That usually means it's running as root on that server and can just read whatever file you want. How do you protect yourself?
Use DER.
Shush. This is what you have to do to protect yourself from XML. But that's too much work. So
Sup? Great, fantastic. Thanks, Tom. That was scary as usual, and I see it lots of times, and it's scary every single time I see it. On deck over that side, we have Paula, Andrea, Martinez, and over here, with my eyes, the goggles do nothing, is Ben Davies. Yeah, go. I love technical difficulties in lightning talks. It's so much fun to watch. Hold down the power button.
Geospatial software.
Switch on your mic. Switch on your mic. Switch on your mic.
Sorry?
There's a switch on the top.
This is a great talk. Yeah, my name's Ben. I deal with geospatial and Python quite regularly. Obviously, I encounter some really weird bits and pieces. I'll start with the slightly less ugly, which is MATLAB. I've encountered a couple of bits of production code there. Yeah, this came out of a production system for just trying to muck around with file names, and it got worse from there, but I couldn't be bothered to go into the code and dig out anything worse. Then in geospatial, there seems to be this not invented syndrome here, not invented here syndrome, so there is some really obscure, weird software coming out with this thing, Arc Macro Language. This thing's probably the jab at the heart of programming languages for geospatial, because it's ugly and it stinks. So, yeah, we can see here you've got your, I think the keywords have to be prefixed with the ampersands, and you're having to like do strings with % signs, and it's just disgusting. Fortunately, Esri has replaced this with Python. Yeah, probably the next up in the list is Idrissi. About 2 years ago, got tossed essentially 60 pages of code in a Word document and told to get it running on a high-performance cluster. That involved throwing it away when I encountered weird stuff like this.
At least there's no smart quotes.
It does?
No, there's none.
Right, yes. So I saw about 60 pages of this in a Word document. It's like, oh, okay, what the hell is going on here? To sort of dig through some documentation. It wasn't online, so I had to get proprietary documentation from someone. So I'm going through this thing here. It's like, what's this option X? Lists some various parameters. What the hell is an operation number? Find out here. In order to do addition, subtraction, and other things, you need to go into a lookup table. So good luck with that. So here's an example. I had to, I think this is probably for converting a raster layer of just sort of like a grid of values into something else. And it's like, well, what's this multiplication? Why would you multiply anything by 1? So I ended up having to understand what the syntax is, and in this case, yeah, once you actually figure that the asterisk is a comma, then you can... Right, yes, which reminded me of this Fortran quote that, yes, spaces were sort of abandoned in Fortran compared to 8th century writing. How much time have I got left?
Plenty.
Sweet, okay. So we're going to some bonuses, other things that are not particularly not readability, but other things to do with your language environment. One of these was, yeah, Idrissi. There was nothing in terms of like a user community that I could find. There was no documentation on the internet, so it's like I'm having to like email people that actually purchased a copy and get them to send me like Word documents of the actual API. Next thing, it doesn't have loops, so you end up having to write a C++ or Visual Basic wrapper around some of this stuff, which is just like, what the hell? This tool is supposed to be used for like people that are in GIS and not actual coders.
1 minute.
The next thing, every operation writes to a file. So if you can imagine doing, like x equals 3 in Python and then having that dump itself to a file, that's how good Idrissi was. Yeah, and that's all.
It's always good to know that people have it worse than our Gil, I guess, yeah. So Alex Hill, are you here? Are you going to do your lightning talk? Great, well, you're on deck over here. But first, on my left, we have Paula, Andrea, Martinez, who's going to tell us all about software carpentry. And your clock starts now.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk about software carpentry because I think everyone who's at PyCon should know about it. And there was a talk yesterday, and for some of you that have missed. My presentation is on the internet, so if it doesn't work, that's all you need to know. Find softwarecarpentry.org. I'm going to start with a few questions. Who has heard about software carpentry before I just mentioned it? Whoa, that's so cool. Now, who has actually contributed to software carpentry in the last year? Ooh. So for those of you who haven't raised your hand, you can contact those people who have contributed because they know a lot more and that I'm going to say to you in this few minutes. Another last question. Who thinks that knowing how to program is a powerful tool, not only for programmers? Yeah, that's great. That's why we are here. And software carpentry, it's about a few things that I'm going to show you. I hope at least you can learn 3 new things after I finish. The first thing is, what is software carpentry? Software carpentry is a non-for-profit organization around the world. We teach software or computing skills to scientists and engineers to do the research better. And it's only not make it work, it's doing it efficiently and then doing it more elegant. The idea is a 2-workshop day, and we have a lot of practical exercises, and everything is live coding, so people can learn when you make mistakes as well. What is in for you? What we teach is basic programming. We teach testing, versioning control, using the shell, and relational databases. So if you know anything here, then you can help. And we teach Python for programming. The second thing is where and how, where and who, and we are all around the world. And it started in the United States. That's why there's a lot more people in the United States. And we are a growing community in Australia. We are about 40 certified instructors, and I believe the 5 of us are in this room today. So if you want to know more, just follow the link on Twitter. It's SW Carpentry. This is the URL where you can find more information. All the lessons are available online. You can contribute to it. You can reuse it and play with it. You can even use it tomorrow in the sprint and make it better. There's no Python 3 version yet, so you can do that. And because I am based in Brisbane, I want to share with you the context of the people who are instructors here. Please follow us on Facebook to know, on Twitter to know more about us. That's all for me. Thank you.
It's always good to hear from the software carpentry people. They're doing great work getting Python into the hands of scientists all around the world. On deck, we have Adam Breniki, so if you can set up over there. And on this side, we have Alex Hill, who's going to tell us about Django many-to-many minus the middlemen. And let's start.
So the title of the talk is not actually that anymore, but anyway, we'll get there. So in Django, one way to define a relationship is a foreign key. So that firstly adds a column and also adds this accessor to go and get the actual model, the actual related instance, and the other way around. So SQL Alchemy does this differently. Basically, you define all of your columns, and you can define a foreign key, but that's just a column on the model. To get that accessor to actually get the instances of the foreign model, you have to use this relationship function, this massive thing which takes about 50 parameters, but can do an awful lot. So all relationships in SQL Alchemy are defined like this. The great thing about that, though, is that you can basically use arbitrary conditions on that join. So it doesn't need to be just an equality between a primary key and a foreign key on two different tables. So can we do that in Django? Well, normally when you have something like this, for example, a tree structure where you say you want to get the descendants of a particular node in a tree, that's kind of a related thing, but you can't express that generally with a normal many-to-many field. And so normally you'll have a property or a method on your model which returns some other query set which does what you want. So, for example, this is from the docs for Django treebeard. That's how you get the descendants from a particular node, is you call this function, it returns a query set. But I want to be able to have that work just like a normal Django many-to-many field. So get all of these benefits. So get the automatic accessor, be able to use it in filters, and just have it work like a normal many-to-many field without actually having to have that ID relationship. And so we can do that. This is what it looks like. There's a little bit of code involved, but I'll just kind of explain this. So this relationship field is like a many-to-many. This is doing materialized path kind of nested sets, so it's going to retrieve everything in the tree below the current node. So you just use this join conditions argument to provide whatever conditions you want. And so in this case, starts with there is a lookup, a built-in Django lookup, and the following arguments are kind of annotated field names. So we're saying R for the remote side. The slug on that should start with the slug on the local model. And you can give it a related name to get a reverse accessor, and that'll work. That just generates a very straightforward query with no ID matching, but works like a normal Django thing. So you can use it in forms, in filters. You get an automatic accessor. Here's another example. Tags. So this is using Postgres full text search with a custom lookup. In this case, this matches lookup. That can just be anything that returns SQL. So anything that returns SQL you can use as a join condition to create one of these fields. So this is how Django actually generates your join conditions. There are two things. So get joining columns. These are methods on the field class, I think, maybe rel. That just returns pairs on the two different models that are supposed to link with equality. So if we just return nothing from that, then that won't generate any equality conditions. Then there's also this get extra restriction method, which basically just has to return anything with an asSQL method, like, for example, that custom matches lookup. So by just returning something with asSQL from get extra restrictions, returning nothing from get joining columns, we can make Django generate these joins based on whatever criteria we want. Almost. The problem, this is roughly the code that Django uses to generate that join clause, the actual text of it. So up the top there, it's generating the SQL from those column pairs. Down the bottom, it's generating it from the extra restrictions, and then it ANDs them together. But it does that unconditionally. So if you don't have any column pairs, you end up with this AND with no left-hand side. So that's what is needed to fix it. That'll be in 1.9, and this will all work. There's nothing here at the moment. I just made it now, but if you're interested, you can star that or whatever, and I'll put things in it tonight. Thanks.
Great. So over on this side, we have Fraser Tweedale on deck. But first, we have Adam Breniki, who asks us whether we remember VisiCalc. He doesn't.
Right. So, hands up who does remember VisiCalc. Right. Awesome. Because as was said, I don't. Because VisiCalc My slides are not changing. That's awesome. Hooray. Oh, pinwheel. Okay, on the next slide, which will load eventually, I'm sure. VisiCalc was released in 1979. In 1983, Lotus 123 came out, and in 1985, VisiCalc was purchased by Lotus and discontinued. I was born in 1993. So for those of you who are in the same boat as me, VisiCalc was a spreadsheet software. It was one of the first sort of general purpose spreadsheet packages for a personal computer. And I don't have my slide notes anymore, so I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to say. So I'm just going to try and wing it.
Click again?
Sorry?
Is it still pinwheeling?
It is still pinwheeling.
That's remarkable.
Try. Oh. Hang on, I'm going to try full-screening PowerPoint, see how that goes. And then open it again. PyCon-au. Yeah, this is going amazingly. 5% battery and PowerPoint is crashing. Oh, more pinwheels. All right. While you're looking at my wallpaper, and some of you may realize why I'm having some problems from that wallpaper, by the way. So last year, I did my capstone project in my university degree, and I wrote a program that converts VisiCalc files to OpenOffice XML, Spreadsheet ML, or Excel files. And so I was going to go through the way it works, but I don't have my slides, so I'll just skip to the point. This actually wasn't that hard, because I will tell you the way it works, actually. VisiCalc, the way they serialize the spreadsheet is they basically spit out all of the keystrokes that you would need to make to recreate that spreadsheet into a file. So it's not the actual not the actual keystrokes that the user typed in. They start from the bottom right corner and they work their way up. There's a reason for this. But it means that it's actually really easy to figure this out 30 years later, because the documentation, the user documentation, mentions this on like page 80, so it was like a month into my project before I found it. But once you see that, the rest of the user documentation is the file format documentation. And you can actually download VisiCalc for DOS. It runs on Windows 7. So you can actually make files to test with. And the file format is text-based, and it's relatively intuitive. So because of those reasons, the project was actually pretty easy. And the thing I wanted to share with you is the thing that I realized as I was doing this project. And that's if with the files that I produce as a computer user and the file types that I'm creating as a developer, if someone in 10 years' time if someone was born in 10 years' time and when they were 21, they wanted to read my files, how much of a hard time? Oh, something's happened. Oh, that's even better. I think my battery's out. So how much of a hard time are they going to have? So that's what I sort of realized as I was doing this project, and that's what I wanted to share with you. And I think I've managed to do that despite my laptop. So thank you.
It still sounds better than the OpenXML spec for Excel these days. On deck we have Roy E, and on this side, telling us about fast and loose reasoning and parametricity, we have Fraser Tweedale.
Thanks.
So,
okay, so this is actually 2 lightning talks. So the first one, fast and loose reasoning.
You still only get 5 minutes.
That's fine. So why don't my programs work? This is a question most of us are probably asking ourselves most of the time. Here's some of the reasons. We are a bunch of galahs that just keep on using nulls, typecasing, typecasting, exceptions, non-substructural recursion, and functions that aren't actually functions. These can be called escape hatches, but I think a better name is traps. Total languages are a class of languages that don't actually have any of those, and every single function and program terminates nicely. Unfortunately, most of us are not using total languages. Even Haskell has exceptions and general recursion. There's a concept called fast and loose reasoning, which says that we should reason about programs as though they were written in a total language, even though they're not. And this was justified mathematically by Danielson et al. In 2006 in a paper called Fast and Loose Reasoning is Morally Correct. So what does this cost? Well, it costs us nothing. It turns out that you can write any program at all without using any of those things. And by avoiding these traps, you get the benefit of composability, referential integrity, which gives rise to equational reasoning, and easier reuse. So in summary, avoid all of those trapdoors and write programs as though you were working in a total language, and you get these benefits. Okay, theorems for free. Second lightning talk. Parametric polymorphism, or you might know it as generics. For Python, PEP 484 kind of might make this possible. So 484 defines the typing module. We can import typevar, list tuple, and a whole bunch of other stuff, and define a type variable t. Now, from this point forward, we're going to imagine that we have some sort of compile time type checking for Python. Consider these two function signatures. The first one, f, has one parameter x's, which is going to be of the type list int, and it's going to return a list of int. The second one, the function f has one parameter x's with the type list t for all t, and returns list t, and the t has to be the same as what was in the input. So, straw poll, who among you thinks the first one gives more information than the second? Show of hands, right? Who thinks the second one actually gives the programmer more information? Okay, and a lot of people who didn't put their hand up. And who thinks the first one is better? And who thinks the second one is better? Okay, so more people agree that the second one is better.
You're asking Python people about types, that's dangerous.
Ooh, well, the people who put their hands up for the second one are correct. So, where a type variable is used, the implementer cannot use functions or constructors specific to any specific type. So the user has a guarantee that the function will work for any type that they choose, and the implementer is constrained to ignore irrelevant things and guided towards a correct implementation faster. But there are other benefits. Theorems for free. In 1989, Phil Wadler said, write down the definition of a polymorphic function on a piece of paper, tell me its type, but be careful not to let me see its implementation, and I will tell you a theorem that the function satisfies. So useful theorems can be derived from types. Or to put it another way, a type is a partial, or indeed sometimes a complete specification of the behavior of the function, and this result is called parametricity. So let us consider this function, the function f, which takes a list of t for all t and returns a list t. What does this function do? Does it reverse the list? Well, it might. A reverse function would have this type. But it could also return the empty list. But here's a theorem that this function must satisfy. Every element in the output appears in the input. So this type tells you that about what this function does. You didn't have to write it in the documentation, and no one using the function had to go and look at the code to realize that this is true.
1 minute.
So let us consider this function now. The function g takes a parameter x of type t and returns a tuple with 2 fields, and each of those fields has the type t. Over to you. What is the theorem about this function? What might this function do or not do? Someone yell out. Yes? Right, that's right. It's always going to be x and x. So in fact, this is a once inhabited type, and you know just from looking at the type exactly what this function does. And you didn't have to call the name of the function something descriptive. The name doesn't matter, and no one had to tell you this in the documentation. It's right there in the type. So wrapping up, avoid the traps, and you will get programs and functions that are easier to reason about and write correct software faster, and embrace the types, because types are documentation, and you can derive useful theories from the types. This concludes my talks.
Okay, so on deck we have Sam Bishop over this side, but first, Hawkie, who is going to tell us all about Pythonic naming, which is going to be all opinionated and stuff, I bet.
Oh, yes.
You have no opinions.
I have lots of facts. Hello. Hello, I'm Amber Brown, and yes, I did use it again from someone on Twitter. Anyway, this is my Twitter. You can see such wonderful tweets as this. So, I think I'm doing it right. I'm not sure.
That's definitely factual.
Yes. So, I'm going to be tackling one of the two biggest problems in programming. There's cache invalidation and naming, and off by 1 errors. We need a PEP for Python naming. The regulation should be that the name should be a common word. Werkzeug is fine, it's German, it's common. It actually means work thing. It's great. Should be easy to spell, unlike and easy to pronounce, like Django. But the most important thing is that it's a horrible pun. This is why Twisted is the best package on PyPy. PyPI. I mean, just look at the book. It's so good. It's Twisted Pythons. We have a cursors replacement called insults. The RPC framework is called Spread, and it's made up of banana and jelly. Jelly's a bit like pickle. We have a Channel S package, and it's called Tubes. So you have twisted tubes. It's pretty cool. The live debugger is called Manhole. You just jump inside your application. The Flask clone is called Klein, because a twisted flask is a Klein bottle. The Django runner is called Hendrix, because a twisted Django Reinhardt is Jimi Hendrix. And the dual direction WebSockets is called Autobahn, which is also German. But it's not just us. Some people on PyPI are getting pretty good. You know, apart from that, it's called the cheese shop to start with. The Py2 and Py3 compat library is called Six. That's good. Good name. Internationalization, Babel, Tower of Babel. I think that's a thing. The process pooling, Billard, yeah. The Python interpreter written in Python is PyPy. It's pretty cool. The logo is an Ouroboros. It's pretty cool. We've got a soap client called Suds. You should aspire to this. I expect better from you all. There's so many boring names like PyES or Elasticsearch. You should be calling it Stretch Yadda. You need to make it amusing. You need to make it an obscure play on words, just like that briefcase thing. That's obscure. I haven't seen one of those in 20 years. And it makes it really easy to Google as a side effect, because no one else but a Pythonista would call their pride and joy such a dumb name. And we should keep Python weird, because it's what makes this community really great. Our naming, our jokes, our community, it's all what makes this the best thing ever. That's all.
Okay. On deck we have Tim Bell, but on my left first we have Sam Bishop.
Yeah, my name's Sam, and
Sam's topic is distractions.
Yes, microphones are one of them. Yes, distractions are all around us, and statistically, there are going to be someone that actually notices I'm screwing that up. Now, if this room had a representative sample of society, there would be probably 6 or 7 of us that have ADD. But we're not a representative sample, we're a self-selected population, so that number is very, very skewed. But this isn't to talk about ADD, it's to talk about distractions. It's just very relevant that we keep in mind that some of us actually have problems with these things that are far worse than we do. Now, it can be a good thing. If I hadn't gotten distracted, this talk wouldn't be about distraction. It would be about horrible uses of Unicode characters that none of us want to read. Now, it's usually a bad thing, though. Yeah. And being a bad thing, I wanted to see if I could actually do something to help someone, at least one person, but hopefully there's more than one of you out there that finds these tools useful. Now, the first one is Task Warrior. This thing is incredibly easy to use. If you use it even just to store one application's tasks with that Git project, you may actually make your life a lot easier, because it's open source and it works everywhere, even on Windows. Now, it's that easy. That's not the best way to read it, but that thing there says task add something that you put in there. It's that simple. You don't have to open a GUI, you don't have to go to a web browser, you just type in task add and what you want to add. You don't have any distraction from that. You never see what you're actually already doing. You only see what you're adding. So you can't be distracted by the queue of tasks building up behind you as you add new things to it. It also has a whole pile of tools to make getting back to the tasks easier and much, much better to work with than a few of the GUIs I've seen out there. All of this is in the one app, no extra stuff. Now, the rest of these are Mac apps, but I do see plenty of MacBooks in the audience, so I figured it's pretty useful. Now, the first one is Mailplane. Mailplane is a dedicated app designed only for Gmail. So if you're using Google Apps for Business or just Gmail for yourself, this will mean that you don't open your browser. Your browser is distraction central. There is Reddit, there is Twitter, there is the rest of the internet. Stay away from it if you want to be productive. Consequently, I am very, very glad that I paid for this tool. It means I actually don't waste a lot of time. I have it right there when I need it. I've got my email and my calendar. And it ties in with keys, so it's actually an email app, not Control-Shift-Enter to avoid the browser thinking I'm doing things. The next one is Dash. Hands up who already has Dash. Yay, share that love. Dash is awesome. It's instant. It's fantastic.
There's also Zeal on Linux, which I think reads the same doc format.
Please, no interruptions. Does, yes. Oh, oops.
And it has almost every documentation format you could imagine. Don't think that it won't have it. It's got everything from any language you could think of, other than the obscure ones you find on weird websites, right down to every subtype and engine and thing in there. It's got a number of Python modules that are particularly important. It's got very, very comprehensive documentation on configuration formats. You will find it worth the money you spend. The next one is Fluid. Now, Fluid is very similar to a project that Mozilla abandoned. Those of us who remember Prism and may have actually liked it, not that Prism, the good Prism, will remember that having the ability to block out the rest of the internet was good. So there's an example where I've got it pointing at a Fabricator instance I've just set up for a project. Now, that's a whole different tool, but this means I don't have an address bar. I can't get away from the website I've just opened.
1 minute.
This is it opening Wikipedia. It's just a generic screenshot. Omni Outliner. Now, yes, it's expensive, but it is the best structured note-taking tool I have found ever. It actually works. It's not a half-kludged together thing that wishes it was org mode, or a Vim organizer that doesn't integrate with the keyboard shortcuts correctly, or it works, and it actually works really, really well on every platform that they put it to. And it is an open standard. They actually do produce well-formatted XML. So if you do need to integrate into the rest of your tools, if you do need to somehow tell it, oh, this task is complete, oh, I've done that in some other tool, you can. And the APIs aren't even an API. It's just a file. And it is quite a very pretty application to look at, so you don't tend to stare at it and think, oh my God, why do I use this? Which is just yet another distraction in life. And finally, this is another distraction.
Thanks, Sam. And everybody, please thank Tim Bell for a fantastic talk. Wait, let's go back to the start. Time travel debugger, Tim Bell.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tim Bell, I'm presenting something that somebody else has done. Tom Limoncelli is a sysadmin who works at Stack Exchange. And he released this tool on the 1st of April 2014, and for some reason people thought it was a joke. And then he tweeted about it a year later saying, actually, it's not a joke at all. So have a look. Time travel debugger, or if I could turn back time, that's a, he loves his jokes. So here's Tom's description. Have you ever been using PDB to step through a program and suddenly realize you wish you could jump back in time and know what a variable used to contain? This version of PDB adds the ability to jump back in time to the state of your program as it was in the past. You can examine variables and even continue execution from that point forward, although that is dangerous because it may harm the space-time continuum. So he's got this little demo program, which I'm just going to have a look at. So basically, it prints out foo for no good reason, and then it enables this, this time travel debugger feature. And we're just going to drop into the debugger at various points and step through next at various points. And you see this PDB 0 and PDB 1. These are the things, the points in time we can go back to. So just down the bottom there, we've typed ulist, and those are the 4 points in time that we can actually go back to. And if we type ujump1, we're back there, and we can re-examine the value of x at that point, print x. And it was 500. And then we can jump back to the future with ujump3, except, oh, there's no such universe, because back at 1, we hadn't got to 3 yet.
Brian Thorn, you're on deck, by the way. I forgot to announce that.
So you can confirm that by looking at ulist1, which just shows the one future universe. So UUP takes us back to where we came from. And there we see the 4 places we could go back to, and when we print X, it's 15. So that's just a really quick demo. Is it actual time travel? Is it magic? No. It's just using os.fork. Oh yeah, this is not necessarily pretty, and obviously you don't want to use it in production. Who would? So just a brief overview. PID equals os.fork, and if we're in the parent, we're going to save the PID. If we're in the child, we're going to say, hey, we're in the child, we're going to sleep, and there's a bunch of other signal processing that goes on to go backwards and forwards. All the details are on Tom's blog post, not by me. He's got it as a patched pdb.py. The patch is there. Homework exercise, push the patch upstream to pdb. End of part 1. Part 2, which wasn't advertised. Do you recognise this? Okay, you've all seen it. It's meant to help motivate you or allow other people to see how productive you are, and then maybe judge you. What if you have depression? For many people, depression is made worse by feeling you're not good enough. Being reminded of lack of productivity when you're depressed will not help. This is something that people have talked about at this conference. Curtis Maloney, thank you for bringing it up. Russell Keith McGee, please thank you for sharing your story. Does GitHub let you turn this off? I can't see how. Somebody has made a note that maybe there should be a feature that allows this to be turned off. I don't know if that's going anywhere. What do we take away from this? I was going to put conclusions here, but really I'm not sure what the conclusions should be. Maybe we need to talk to GitHub and say, hey, look, consider if the person viewing their own page or viewing somebody else's page has depression or doesn't want to be reminded that actually they've not been able to make any progress for 2 weeks. Why do we really need to know how many days in a row you've contributed, given that that probably indicates you're not actually taking a break, which can be unhealthy?
1 minute.
I'm interested in talking to people about how we can change attitudes towards just working ourselves to death, how we can change attitudes towards assessing people, judging people, or rather, how about not judging people about how much they've been able to contribute, because we're going to make people sick. People are already sick. We're going to make people sicker. So I don't know the way forward on this particular point. This is just something that occurred to me, and I thought I'd bring it to people's attention. So thank you. I'll be tweeting these slides.
Oh, thank you, Tim Bell. So on deck on this side we have Thuran Sunti, but on my left we have, controversial, Brian Thorne telling us to roll your own crypto. Ooh, scandal.
But not in production. So there have been some
Bait and switch.
It's gone wrong. There have been some really great crypto talks over the last couple of days. Some really useful advice, practical considerations, etc. But they all took great pains to point out you shouldn't be considering doing any crypto yourself. And the warnings were there. You're not going to be smart enough. You're not going to understand the subtleties or the complexities. You'll get it wrong. Just leave it to the professionals, right? That was the message. I'm not buying that. And I'd like to give just a very gentle rebuke. For one thing, there's a lot of young developers here at PyCon, and we don't want to give the wrong message. Please don't walk away from this conference thinking you cannot, or worse, should not, be writing crypto code. Cryptography is really fun. It's 100% something you can do. The science of secrets is really fun. And the discipline of cryptography is a rewarding field of study. Yes, to do it professionally, you'll need to get pretty good at it. That applies in many, many careers, be it in arts. We don't expect people who take drama class or acting or singing to necessarily do that, or rugby players. Do we pass on a similar message about playing sport? We assume that, you'll be exercising your bodies, improving your coordination, building team skills, etc. And you'll learn some specific things about rugby that might not be that useful for your future either, like predicting where an inflated oval ball will bounce after kicking it. The same applies to crypto. Anyone can write their own implementation of asymmetric encryption schemes, RSA or something. Gasp, even make up your own. It'll exercise their brains, improve problem solving, coding, math skills, and you'll learn some specifics that won't be that useful for your future as well. Most importantly though, you'll learn and you'll understand. In this community, we're all about being inclusive, about being encouraging, and at times pushing the accepted norms to be better. Let's not treat any technical topic with such reverence that it gathers the stigma. Don't be afraid to look at the other type of code. Why should anyone be interested in crypto at the moment? Like, aside from keeping the Wi-Fi in this room secure and all that online shopping and banking and private messaging, social networking, verified download packages and digital signatures on things, credit card transactions, the other digital currency, Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera. Aside from all of that, cryptography might actually be one of the potential contributors to the issues that were raised in this morning's brilliant keynote. Getting insight from data without seeing the data is becoming more and more possible. One of the current hot topics lies at this intersection between privacy, cryptography, and machine learning. Did you know that there are multiple techniques for learning across encrypted data? There are secret sharing schemes, secure multi-party computation, partially and fully homomorphic encryption systems. These let you do some of the algorithms and machine learning techniques which have been talked about throughout this conference, like k-means clustering, linear regression, logistic regression, in a privacy-preserving way. With these systems, you usually either leave the data distributed or you process on encrypted data. You can learn the insight, the model, without ever seeing the private raw data. This obviously has huge implications for all of us and isn't a panacea, but there's a lot of potential here. Medical research should benefit from this in the very near future. In many fields, there are many privacy and legal reasons why data can't be brought together. But maybe with this technology, it's an option. Any of the stats people here will attest to the fact that more unbiased data will help with model accuracy. With horizontally partitioned data, each hospital could keep their own detailed private patient records, but these hospitals and patients wanting to, if they wanted to, could participate in research, which could learn across all of this private data safely. Or take it one step further, and each individual could have their own private data vault, if you will.
1 minute.
Their data could be privately used for research studies. Insightful algorithms could perhaps request use of your attributes in a privacy-preserving way. It opens up a whole new world of possibility in terms of user control and anonymization. So decide for yourself. Should the Googles, the Facebooks be the repository of knowledge about you? Should they decide who gets to carry out experiments, monitor your data? Or should you? Thanks.
Well, we're down to our last two lightning talks now. So on deck on the left, we have Robert Collins. But on this side, we have Thuran Sunti, who's going to tell us about a whole bunch of things, but he's not going to tell us about life, apparently. Start.
Hey, guys. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me here. So I'm from the UK Robotics Club. This is something a little bit different. So just to quickly give you a little bit of a spiel, so TLDR. So what do we want to do? We want to connect students with people and resources. Something, if we think about a motto, maybe learn, build, share. We want students to pick something to work on and just go do it. You notice with a lot of students, a lot of people in life, I guess in general, they have trouble starting projects. They have so many ideas, and we want to get rid of that. Remove barriers to entry to projects and just get people doing stuff. Next bit, TLDR. Robotics is pretty multidisciplinary. Get people working together. Mechanical and software people. Put them together and get them to work on something. TLDR. So what do we want to do? We want to find the cool things happening at uni, in industry, in the community, things like this. So I'm not a software engineer or an IT person. I'm an electrical engineering student. But I thought this would be really cool. I thought it'd be a great chance to learn something, meet some cool people, and that's why I'm here. Last TLDR. What do we want to do by, what can we hope to achieve from doing all this stuff? So, hopefully make our students and whoever joins the club really a better engineer, help them meet some cool people like you guys here, and make good friends and, make uni a bit more fun. So, club overview. Hey guys, I'm Thuran, I'm the president. I got thrust into this role. I know very little about robotics, but I just said yes to an opportunity. They'd done very little last year, and they were like, we need a new president, the club's going to die. Someone said my name, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, I'll just take that opportunity. So you can get a lot out of life just by saying yes to opportunities. I said yes to this. I didn't know what PyCon was. I was just like, yeah, I'll come along. It sounds fun. And here I am. What do we want to do? So a couple of things. We want to get people working on projects. So do you guys have any projects for students to work on? Do you have resources? Can you offer mentoring or support? So things from robotics, electronics, software projects, or mechanical things. Other things we're looking for, I guess, is things like sponsorships. Do you have contacts in industry, academia, startups? Do you have $, or equipment you can give us? And other things like, if you can't do that, what about talks? What about presentations? What about fairs? Anything cool you want to talk to students about? Students love hearing what people get up to in life. One really interesting thing that I found was when I started going up to academic stores, just barging in, walking up to them, or just knocking on their doors and just finding out what they do, how we can interact with them and the club, it was like, wow, these guys do some very cool stuff that I don't see in courses. And yeah, a bunch of other events. So what's happening this semester, projects-wise? So we've got a bunch of people working on a prosthetic arm. That meme on the left is actually true. Prosthetic arms and things like that can be very expensive. So we've got a bunch of people looking into arm designs. We've taken an open source design that we've now printed. We're trying our own one, I think, this semester. What else is happening? Next. We've got people wanting to work on a fixed-wing drone. We've got people wanting to do drone stuff. High-altitude balloon. One of the students has experience with balloons and sending them up to the stratosphere. So someone wants to do that. We've got some videos later, but I'll show you that if I've got time. Other things, workshops and competitions. So Robot Wars, anyone? This is, I guess, more relevant to you guys. So something we tried last semester was having a speaker from IIX, David Jorm, come along. He delivered a talk on open source software, and we did it with the UQ Computing Society. And then we were hoping to get students working on projects after that. You know, inspire people with talks, and then say, hey, look, work on something. Pick something to work on, improve your coding abilities, and meet some cool people, and build up a repertoire. That didn't really happen, so we started a website. It's up here, but we've got it there. We're at a stage where we can start accepting projects and things like that. And from all what I've heard this weekend, I think we need to get students. Students are the people with time. You guys are all very busy by the looks of it. Students have time, or we can make time, or we procrastinate enough that we can make time for this stuff. So contact us, Robotics, or the UQ Computing Society. Lastly, I guess, CompCon. So it's another conference. If you're keen for another one after this, it's in October, 3rd to 5th. How much time do I have?
Oh, 1 minute.
So it's a student-run conference. It's been co-hosted by the Robotics Hub in 2015. You can check it out on the website. What's going to be there? Tech talks, demos, workshops, careers fairs, dinner. What are they looking for? They need speakers, sponsors, and attendees. So quick recap, I guess. So we just want to do some cool stuff. We want to solve problems, work on projects, and learn. I think that's most uni students, or even people in life, right? But what's happening, I guess, is we're in a bit of a chicken and egg problem. We need resources to run projects and workshops and to engage the community. But we need projects and things happening to justify asking for resources. So it's kind of like that meme there. You need job experience, but to get job experience, you need, for that job. So get in touch. Come chat with us. I'm here, and I think Ali is here somewhere too. Or email uqrobotics@gmail.com. If we've got a bit. Oh yeah. Thank you. Cool videos. So this is the arm operating.
Great, thank you very much for that. Our last lightning talk is from Robert Collins. On deck on this side will be Clinton once I get the slides for the close set up. So your time starts, need to change timer, now.
Cool. So testing's important. There's been a lot of talks about testing this conference, as there should be, because it's important. One of the particular things that's come up is doing data-driven tests where you throw random data or manually created data that sort of tests your boundary conditions and so on. And that's actually really tedious. It's very, very useful, but it's tedious. And it's hard, if you've got anything that's more than trivial, to figure out where the boundary conditions are. And once you get a reproducible case, to actually get a minimal reproducible case. Wouldn't it be great if that was magic? Sorry, automated. So hypothesis is, in Python, roughly the equivalent of quick check from Haskell. If that means something to you, great, you don't need the rest of this talk. So this is a test that I added to the subunit library today because I was like, okay, I've really been meaning to get some hypothesis stuff around this and find out the bugs in my parsers, because parsers are a rich source of bugs. This test says, the at given is decorated from hypothesis. It says, here are some things I'm going to inject in. st.binary is a generator of binary data sorts, data inputs. And the test name, the test function, test hypothesis decoding, code bytes is the thing that's injected by hypothesis. And then I've got a little function which acts like a normal test. I wrap the code bytes into a bytes.io, I create a stream, I process the stream, it shouldn't blow up. And I shouldn't have anything left in the stream when this thing is finished. You shouldn't stop halfway through, it should accept the whole input. And I could do some other stuff where I say, there should have been errors or other stuff come out the other end, but this is actually enough. So I take that and I run it against my tests and I get an error. My thoroughly tested TDD from the scratch test suite is a fail. it didn't actually prevent me having bugs. And the 3 lines, so I've added this in already. Okay. So those 3 lines just saying, hey, look, there's not enough data there to have a full packet. That's going to fix my bug. I switch it back. I run my test again. I'm very happy. Hypothesis is wonderful. Not me. Sounds like it's coming from the back of the room. Anyway, there's a quick start guide. The quick start is really clear about how to use it. It's very easy to hook into your test suite, and it is immensely useful. 5 minutes will almost guarantee finding a bug in something.
I have no idea what that sound was, but okay. Yeah, so that's the end of the lightning talks. I hope you all enjoyed them. Give a huge round of applause to all 14-ish of our presenters today. These are very much my favorite part of the conference every year, and I'm so glad that we had so many interesting and varied lightning talks today.